If you're considering investing a lump sum of money that you recently received into an annuity, then you'll want to watch this video as I'm going to discuss 5 reasons why an annuity might not be a good investment and rather a brokerage account might be a better investment for you and your money. Welcome back. This is episode 260. If you find yourself with a lump sum of money from an inheritance, maybe the sale of a business, the sale of a property, and you're wondering what is the best type of investment account that you can invest that money in, there's really 2 options that are available to you. One is a plain old brokerage account. Another is an annuity. In this episode, I'll be discussing these 2 investment options in greater detail, as well as highlighting 5 major pitfalls of investing in an annuity versus a traditional brokerage account. But before I get into that, if you are 50 and older and you want to learn more about planning your retirement, then consider signing up for my on-demand retirement planning course. It's called Retirement Readiness On Demand, and it's available through my Retire with Ryan website. I take you through step-by-step on how to create your own plan for retirement. We discuss taxes, Social Security, Medicare, investing, insurance, estate planning, and much more. The best part is that you get to take the course at your own pace, and it has about 7 hours of material as well as worksheets to help you to work through many of these areas. To sign up, head over to retirewithryan.com, then click on courses, then click on demand. There are many conversations surrounding why an annuity could be a good option. For some, it may very well be the choice that makes them feel the most comfortable with their money, because annuities are generally more conservative investments. It could be the appeal of guaranteed lifetime income. It could be the tax-deferred growth that annuities offer. It could be a death benefit that your heirs would receive from the annuity. It also could be a long-term care rider that's available from annuities in certain states. Annuities do offer some unique benefits. However, these additional benefits don't come free. They come for an additional cost, and a cost that you must weigh. Now, an annuity is an insurance product, which is a contract between you're the annuitant, the owner of the annuity, and the insurance company, and it's generally designed to give you a guaranteed stream of income. The income is calculated based on your life expectancy, and the contract is purchased for a set amount. And that we're really talking about buying an annuity with a lump sum of money, but you could also fund an annuity through a series of payments. So this is called a deferred annuity when you're actually investing in the annuity and the money is deferring. And any growth that you receive on your annuity while it's deferred, and we're talking about non-qualified annuities. Those are non-retirement annuities. So this is after-tax money, as I mentioned earlier, money that you're getting from the sale of a house, from inheritance, from the sale of a business, a lump sum of money generally. Could even be a CD that matured at the bank, and you're now considering putting that into an annuity. So with a non-qualified annuity or an annuity that's non-retirement, any growth that you have on that money is going to be taxable. The original contribution or the basis or the principal is not going to be taxable. So if you take a withdrawal from that annuity, then it's going to be taxable. The original principal will not be taxed. Now, your returns in the annuity depend upon several factors, but really the primary determining factor of your potential gain in an annuity is the type of annuity that it is. There are 3 main types of deferred annuities, and I'll cover them briefly. The first is a fixed annuity, and this is where you get a fixed rate of interest from the insurance company for a specified period of time. Maybe, let's say you bought a 4-year fixed annuity that was paying you 5%, right? That's an example of a fixed annuity. So that is determined when you buy the contract. That determines the interest that you're going to receive. You know that when you buy it. A variable annuity is an annuity that invests in different investment accounts. They're called sub-accounts that are very similar to mutual funds. So this is somebody who's looking for more growth in an annuity. You'd be investing probably in more stock funds. You could invest in bond funds, real estate, commodities, but these funds are tracking an index like the S&P 500. So variable annuities offer you really the highest growth of the three options. And then the last would be an index annuity, which is kind of a combination of the two. An index annuity is what it sounds like. It's tied to an index. So just let's say, for example, your index annuity was tied to the S&P 500 index. So every year there would be a calculation based off how that index did. This is known as a point-to-point annuity. So let's say at the beginning of the year, the S&P 500 index started at 5,000 and it went up 10%. It ended the year at 5,500. Then you could potentially earn 10% on the annuity. Maybe it went down 20%, then usually you cannot lose anything. So that's the major appeal of the annuity, the index annuity, because you have limited downside. And with these, there's usually a cap. You don't participate 100% in the S&P 500. Usually there's a cap. It could be anywhere from 8 to 10%, maybe more, where that's the most you can make in any 1 year. So if the S&P 500 went up 25%, but your cap rate was 10, then you'd receive a 10% return that year, not 25%. So now that you have a little understanding of the different types of annuities that there are, let's explore a little bit more about why I feel that annuities are not a good investment for many people, and a brokerage account, a plain old brokerage account, is usually a better fit for you. So reason number one is due to inflation and hedging your income against inflation in retirement. That is really the biggest concern that any retiree should have, is that you're not going to be living on a fixed income in retirement. You want your income to be able to keep pace with inflation in retirement. So if we're talking about fixed annuities, they often pay a guaranteed interest rate, and that's going to be better than leaving your money in the bank, but a guaranteed interest rate is usually going to be somewhere between 4 and 6%, depending on the annuity contract and the term that you purchase it at. Those are current rates. These rates are subject to change. If interest rates go down in the future, these rates will also go down. But currently, you could actually get a decent rate on a fixed annuity. But however, if inflation does rise in the future at a higher rate, you could really see your real return, which is your return net of inflation, decline over time. So if you're just looking at, in contrast, comparing that fixed annuity to the S&P 500, for example, the S&P 500 has returned an average annual return of 10.33% since 1957. And this is despite many market fluctuations. So if you had an average rate of inflation of 3%, let's say over the next 10 years, and your fixed annuity is earning you 5%, which sounds like it is a good investment, it's really only making you a couple percent above inflation. So it's really not growing very much above inflation, versus if you contrast that with investing in the S&P 500, you could be outpacing inflation by 7% per year if it averaged that 10% over the next 10 years. So there's no guarantee of past performance, obviously, with the stock market. And if you're a conservative investor, the fixed annuity might be the right fit for you. If you're very cautious about investing, you don't want to invest in the stock market. But if instead, as a retiree, you're worried about market fluctuations, instead of really being worried about keeping up with inflation, you could be misappropriating some of your funds if all of your funds are in a low-yielding fixed investment. And this could be the case of a CD or a bond. So within these, the ability to keep pace with inflation, you are somewhat limited when you're dealing with a fixed annuity. And you could also be limited with an index annuity. It also depends on what your cap rate is in the index annuity. There are some now that have some reasonable cap rates, but if you have a cap rate of 4 or 5% in your indexed annuity, that is not giving you a lot of opportunity to keep pace with inflation. Because remember, that's the most you can make in any 1 year. You don't make that every year. So if the stock market goes down a couple years and you have 0% return, that's going to further lower your return in that annuity. Reason number two why I think a brokerage account is better than an annuity is because of liquidity. Annuities, almost all of them come with some type of commitment period or surrender period. And during that time frame, if you want early access to your money, you're going to have to incur a penalty or a surrender charge. So this is known when you buy your annuity, and these periods could range, if it's a 3-year annuity, 3 years, all the way up to 10 years. The average is about 7 years. So that means if you bought an annuity with a 7-year surrender period, if you want to take your money out within the first 7 years, you're going to have to pay a surrender penalty. Now this surrender charge, there's a schedule, and let's just say, for example, it was 7% in the first year. A lot of times it's then 7% in the second year, and then it declines 1% every year after. So then it would be 6%, 5%, 4, 3, 2, and then it would be 0 after 7 years. So that is a problem, because if you need access to your money through an unanticipated expense, such as maybe your heating system went, or you had an unexpected roof repair, or there's a wedding or a medical emergency, and you want access to your money, you're going to have to pay a penalty to get it. Now, there are usually a free withdrawal amount in many annuities, but it generally is limited at 10% per year. So usually many annuities have a free withdrawal amount of 10% a year, but if you needed more than 10%, that's where that penalty could apply. So let's contrast that with a traditional brokerage account. There is no limitation with getting your money. You can get it at any point. If you have $100,000 you invested in a brokerage account, you invested it in some exchange-traded funds, some ETFs, and a year later you find an opportunity to buy a business for $100,000, you can take that money out without any penalty. You would just owe any taxes if you had made capital gains on those investments, but there'd be no penalties. So just like within the annuity, if you made money in the annuity and you took it out, you'd pay taxes. The same thing would apply to the brokerage account, but you could get it out at any point. So that is a major advantage with the brokerage account as far as that liquidity that it has as well. And sometimes there can be complicated things to understand with getting access to your annuity as well, and that doesn't apply. So that liquidity, it's also very easy within a brokerage account. You could go in there and have your advisor or you sell your investments, and then within a couple business days you can have your money. With any annuity withdrawal, there's paperwork. You have to fill out the paperwork, send it away, then wait for the money. It could be weeks to get your money. The reason number 3 why I think a brokerage account is better than an annuity is due to tax efficiency. So income or withdrawals from annuities, as I said earlier, are taxed as ordinary income, unless you annuitize the annuity. Now, annuitizing means that you give up control of the principal and you agree to get a monthly payment for the rest of your life. So most people don't do that. Most people just take withdrawals from an annuity as they need the money. So if we're talking about non-qualified annuities, these are annuities, again, non-retirement accounts that are funded with after-tax money. Any investment gains that you have on the annuity are taxed as ordinary income, and the gains come out first anytime you take a withdrawal. So this is known as last in, first out, or LIFO tax treatment. So this can lead to much larger taxes for many people compared to a brokerage account. So let's just say, for example, you have an annuity that you put in $50,000 and it's now grown to $100,000. And you're now getting ready to retire and you want to take out $10,000 a year from that annuity. Well, every time you take out $10,000, it's most likely going to be taxed as ordinary income. So that $10,000, because you're taking out your gains first, until you get down to the initial investment of $50,000, you're taking out gains. So every withdrawal would be taxed as ordinary income. If we contrast that with, let's say you put $50,000 in a stock index fund, like SPLG is a S&P 500 index fund, and that grew to $100,000, and you want to take out $10,000, that's taxed as a capital gain. So it's possible that that capital gain could be taxed at a lower rate. For many people, that's going to be the case. So your taxes are always going to depend upon your tax bracket. So let's just say you're in the 22% tax bracket and you take that $10,000 out from your annuity. You're going to pay 22% federal tax on that $10,000 because it's all ordinary income. If instead that was a $10,000 capital gain and you are in the 22% tax bracket, there's currently a cap of 15% on capital gains for people in the 22% tax bracket. So you get about a 7% tax savings there. If additionally, you can stay in the 12% tax bracket or below as a retiree, you currently, or as anybody I should say, you currently pay 0% tax on your capital gains. So that's really where a major advantage could be, that these long-term investments that you've made in your brokerage account could be taxed at a 0% rate for many, many people. And you can structure your income to come from certain areas so that you take advantage of this. And additionally, another thing to consider is that annuities are a tax-deferred account. So being that, they also require you to wait until age 59 and a half to take out any money and avoid a 10% penalty. So that means if, again, you inherited $100,000, you invested it in an annuity when you're 50 because you thought that was the best thing, and now at 56 you want to take money out, you would have to pay a 10% penalty on any gains you've had on that annuity on top of any income tax. So that's just another reason why the brokerage account is a lot better, especially even for younger people that inherit money or have a lump sum of money they want to invest, because of the fact that at any age you can access this money. And also there could be some serious tax benefits or tax savings versus having that come out of an annuity. Another tax benefit as well is something known as a step up in basis that you can receive if you inherit investments from a spouse or from a parent or family member. So with annuities, anytime you inherit an annuity, taxes are still going to be owed on that annuity. So if it's a non-qualified annuity that we're talking about, let's say it was a $50,000 annuity that's now grown to $100,000, and you inherit that from your parent, then you would still have to pay tax on that $50,000. If instead that was a $50,000 mutual fund they invested in, and now that's grown to $100,000, you could receive what's known as a step up in cost basis. What does that mean? Well, that means the basis that you use to determine the taxes are based on the value that mutual fund was worth the day that your parent passed away. So that means that the $50,000 fund would then be taxed at whatever it was worth when your parent passed away, which means now it's being taxed at the current value. So if you turned around and sold it relatively quickly, you'd owe no tax on that. Whereas in the annuity, whoever inherits that is going to owe tax. So that's really a disadvantage if you're trying to leave money to your beneficiaries, leaving them an annuity, they're going to get stuck with a tax bill. Now, the only real workaround to this would be a spousal beneficiary on a non-qualified annuity. They could potentially continue the contract and keep the annuity deferred, but then when they take the money out, they'll pay tax on it. Or if they then left it to their children would have to pay the tax on it. So the tax bill doesn't ever go away on the annuity, whereas the step up in basis goes away for anyone. This could be the same for a spouse. A spouse inheriting a investment account, a brokerage account from another spouse can also get a full step up in basis. That's why anytime you have highly appreciated assets, you might not want to hold them jointly. You might want to hold them separately and set it up with a beneficiary, such as through a trust or through transfer on death, so that your spouse gets a full step up in cost basis and is able to then sell those assets with a reduced tax bill. So reason number 4 why I think a brokerage account is better than an annuity is due to complexity and transparency. Annuities come in many different forms, as we discussed. We have fixed, variable, indexed. There's also immediate annuities. There's longevity annuities. And they all have their distinct rules, fee structures, risk levels, tax implications. And understanding these requires a lot of time and careful analysis. And entering into an annuity contract based solely on a sales pitch that usually only highlights the benefits, not the disadvantages, is really ill-advised. So many annuities include riders that guarantee such as minimum income benefits, death benefits, cost of living adjustments, long-term care riders. And as I mentioned earlier, each one of these riders can be valuable, but they often add an additional cost of 0.5% to 1.5% in annual fees. And annuities are already expensive to begin with when we're talking about variable annuities. They usually start at 1.5% to 2% at a minimum. So you really need to understand the terms of these riders, how they work. They require detailed analysis and understanding. And even financial advisors can struggle to understand these riders. I have used annuities in the past for clients, and I would tell you that it was even hard for me to keep track of the different annuities because they change all the time. A company comes out with an annuity and they sell that for a year or so, and then they come out with another one that has different features and different fees and different bells and whistles, and it just becomes confusing, and it's hard to keep it straight. Contrast that with a traditional brokerage account. It's a lot more transparent. You get a statement from your custodian, like my company uses Charles Schwab, whoever's holding your money. It clearly details your holdings, what everything's worth. Anytime the markets are open, the stock market or bond market, you can look up your account, see what it's worth. And also, if you're using a straightforward investment vehicle, like if you own individual stocks or if you own exchange-traded funds or mutual funds, you understand how those are valued and any expenses that might come along with those, and it's easy to look that up. There's also, as we discussed, no rider fees, no surrender charges, and it's very easy to understand how things work. And this transparency and clear understanding of your fee structure, I think, really allows you to sleep a little better at night and not have to worry about one more thing to track. So I definitely think it's a major advantage, this transparency and lack of complexity that just a traditional brokerage account has. And the last reason why I think brokerage accounts are better than annuities is lack of aggressive sales pitches. It's important to remember that annuities are insurance products sold primarily by commissioned advisors. And these commissions are often quite large. And this creates a massive conflict of interest anytime an advisor who's receiving a commission is recommending that you buy an annuity. These commissions can be up to 7%. So unfortunately, these commissions can create conflicts and could put advisors in a position where they feel they have to push these advisors on these investments, these annuities on investors, especially on seniors, who really might be better served by just investing in stock mutual funds or stock index funds, or even conservative investments like treasury bonds or money market funds or CDs or investment grade corporate bonds. So by investing through a traditional brokerage account, you can have the option to avoid this conflict, and you can certainly self-manage. You can do this yourself, be free from sales pressure, or you can use a fee-only financial advisor who can be a fiduciary for you, working in your best interest to help you invest your money without these conflicts of these additional commissions that they would get by recommending certain investments to you, and having them be legally bound to work in your best interest. I always recommend working with a fee-only financial advisor, and I actually wrote a book about that, finding the right fee-only financial advisor. And if you haven't downloaded a copy of my book, you can download a free electronic version by heading over to retirewithryan.com and clicking on book. My book, again, is called Fiduciary: How to Find, Hire, and Establish an Aligned and Trusted Partnership with a Fee-Only Financial Advisor. It explains the logic behind working with a true fiduciary, which is a fee-only advisor, how to find one, and many of the pitfalls to look out for. So I hope you found this helpful on 5 reasons why I think a brokerage account is a much better investment option for many people as compared to an annuity. As always, if you have a listener question you want to have considered for a future episode, head over to retirewithryan.com and click on Ask a Question to leave your question. Have a great week, and I look forward to talking to you next Tuesday. Take care.